The night the military convoy crashed through the emergency entrance of St. Catherine's Hospital in Seattle, nobody expected the quiet nurse in the corner to know the kill command for a combat dog. Rain hammered the windows. Blood pooled across the trauma bay floor. A 90-pound German shepherd with dead handler tags and shrapnel wounds lunged at anyone who moved, except her. When Emma Hartley whispered 2 words in flawless tactical protocol, every doctor, every security guard, every decorated officer in that room realized the same thing. The nurse they'd been dismissing for 6 months wasn't who they thought she was. And the secret she'd been hiding was about to detonate. Before we dive in, I need your help. If this story grabs you, stick with me until the very end. It gets darker, messier, and more satisfying than you think. Drop a like, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let me know how far this story travels. Now let's get back to the night everything changed. The rain in Seattle didn't fall. It attacked. It came down in sheets so thick the streetlights outside St. Catherine's Hospital looked like smudged chalk, and the emergency entrance became a waterfall of runoff and grime. Inside, the trauma bay hummed with the usual controlled chaos. Monitors beeping, residents barking orders, nurses moving like chess pieces across blood-stained linoleum. Emma Hartley stood near the supply cabinet, rolling gauze into neat bundles. Nobody looked at her. Nobody ever did. She'd been at St. Catherine's for 6 months, hired through a staffing agency that specialized in placing nurses with unconventional resumes. That was code for people who didn't fit the mold. People who had gaps in their employment history, people who asked too few questions and kept their heads down. Emma fit all 3. She was 32, pale-skinned with dark hair pulled back in a bun so tight it gave her headaches by hour 4 of every shift. She wore the same navy scrubs as everyone else, kept her badge clipped to her chest, and never spoke unless spoken to. The other nurses called her the quiet one. The residents didn't call her anything. To them, she was just another body filling a scheduling gap. Dr. Vanessa Caldwell, the senior attending on duty, was the worst. Caldwell was 40-something, sharp-featured, with the kind of confidence that came from never being wrong, or at least never admitting it. She ran the trauma bay like a general, and she had no patience for nurses who didn't move fast enough, think fast enough, or prove themselves useful fast enough. Emma had learned early on to stay out of Caldwell's way. Tonight, though, staying out of the way wasn't going to be an option. The first sign of trouble came at 11:47 p.m., when the ambulance radio crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice was clipped, professional, but underneath it was something else. Tension, maybe fear. St. Catherine's, this is Unit 12. We're inbound with a priority trauma. ETA 3 minutes. Advise you clear the bay. Caldwell grabbed the handset. Unit 12, what's the injury? Static. Unit 12, repeat. What's the injury? More static. Then finally. Canine, military, severe blood loss, handler deceased, advise. The transmission cut out. Caldwell stared at the handset like it had just insulted her. Canine? They're bringing us a dog? One of the residents, a baby-faced kid named Torres, looked up from his tablet. We're not a vet hospital. No kidding. Caldwell slammed the handset down. Shibawa, somebody call animal control. We don't have the equipment or the authorization to treat a military animal. Emma's hands slowed on the gauze. Military. Handler deceased. She didn't move, didn't speak, but something cold slid down her spine. 3 minutes later, the bay doors exploded open. 2 paramedics came through first, soaked to the bone, their faces pale. Behind them, 4 men in tactical gear, black fatigues, no insignias, weapons holstered but visible, carried a stretcher. On it was a German shepherd, massive and mud-streaked, with a blood-soaked bandage wrapped around its torso. The dog's breathing was shallow, rapid. Its eyes were open, tracking every person in the room with the kind of focus that didn't come from fear. It came from training. Caldwell stepped forward. What the hell is this? One of the tactical guys, a square-jawed man with a scar running through his left eyebrow, didn't even look at her. Dog needs surgery. Now. We're not equipped for now. The word came out flat, final. It wasn't a request. Caldwell's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to Torres. Get me a vet on the phone. I don't care if you have to wake someone up. The dog was lifted onto the trauma table. Immediately, it started thrashing. Not wild, not panicked, controlled, deliberate. The restraints rattled. One of the paramedics tried to adjust the IV line, and the dog's head snapped toward him, teeth bared. The paramedic jerked back so fast he knocked over a tray of instruments. Jesus! Hold him down! Caldwell barked. Two of the tactical guys moved in, but the dog twisted, snarling, and one of them backed off. Doc, this animal's combat trained. You touch him wrong, he'll take your hand. Then sedate him. We tried. He's resistant. Caldwell grabbed a syringe from the crash cart. I don't care. We need him still. She moved toward the table. The dog's eyes locked onto the syringe, and then it lunged. The restraints held, barely, but the force of the movement sent the IV stand crashing to the floor. Caldwell stumbled back, the syringe clattering out of her hand. The tactical guys shouted. Torres froze. One of the nurses screamed. Emma didn't think. She stepped forward. Platz. The word came out quiet, calm, firm. The dog stopped. Its body went rigid, still trembling, but it stopped. Every person in the room turned to look at her. Caldwell's voice was ice. What did you just say? Emma kept her eyes on the dog. It's a command. I know it's a command. How do you know it? Emma didn't answer. She moved closer to the table slowly, hands visible. The dog's breathing was still fast, but its focus shifted from the syringe to her. She didn't reach for it, didn't touch it, just stood there, close enough that the animal could see her, smell her, read her body language. Easy, she said softly. You're okay. The dog's ears flicked. Caldwell's voice cut through the quiet. Step back, Hartley. You're a nurse, not a dog whisperer. She's getting through to him, Torres said. She's interfering. But Emma didn't move. She kept her voice low, steady. He's not aggressive. He's guarding. Guarding what? Emma finally looked at Caldwell. His handler. The tactical guy with the scar spoke up. Handler's KIA. Explosion near the docks 2 hours ago. The room went silent. Emma turned back to the dog. She could see it now, the way his body was positioned, the way his eyes kept darting to the door, the way he flinched every time someone moved too fast. This wasn't a feral animal. This was a soldier who'd just watched his partner die and didn't understand why. He doesn't know where his handler is, Emma said quietly. He thinks he's still on mission. Caldwell crossed her arms. How could you possibly know that? Emma didn't answer. Behind them, the bay doors opened again. This time, it wasn't paramedics. 3 men in military dress uniforms walked in, flanked by 2 more in civilian clothes with federal IDs clipped to their belts. The one in front was older, mid-50s, with iron-gray hair and the kind of posture that came from decades of giving orders and having them followed without question. He looked at the dog, then at Emma, then at Caldwell. Who's in charge here? Caldwell stepped forward. I am. Dr. Vanessa Caldwell, senior attending. The man didn't shake her hand. Colonel Marcus Vance, U.S. Army Intelligence. This animal is government property involved in an ongoing classified operation. I need a status report. He's lost significant blood and needs surgery, but we're a human hospital. I've called for a veterinary consult. No consult, no outside personnel. This stays internal. Caldwell blinked. You want us to operate on a military dog without a vet? I want you to stabilize him until transport arrives. That could take hours. He'll bleed out. Then don't let him bleed out. The colonel's gaze shifted to Emma, who calmed him down. Caldwell hesitated. One of the nurses. Which one? Emma felt every pair of eyes in the room land on her. Vance walked over. He was tall, imposing, and when he stopped in front of her, she could smell the rain still clinging to his uniform. What's your name? Emma Hartley. How'd you know that command? Emma kept her voice flat. I picked it up. Where? Around. Vance's eyes narrowed. You military? No. Ex-military. Emma didn't answer. Vance studied her for a long moment, then turned to one of the men in civilian clothes. Runner. The man pulled out a tablet and started typing. Caldwell stepped between them. Excuse me, Colonel, but this is a hospital, not an interrogation room. If you want to question my staff, you'll need to go through proper channels. Vance didn't even look at her. Your staff just used a classified command on a classified asset. That makes this a matter of national security. She used a German word. That doesn't make her a spy. It makes her someone I need to know about. The man with the tablet looked up. Sir, we've got a match. Vance turned. Show me. Emma's stomach dropped. The man held up the tablet. On the screen was a service photo. Younger, sharper, hair cropped short, uniform pressed. It was her. Vance's expression didn't change, but his voice got quieter, colder. Sergeant Emma Hartley, assigned to the 47th Combat Medical Unit, specialized in battlefield trauma and canine rehabilitation. The room went silent again. Caldwell stared at Emma like she'd just grown a second head. You were Army? Emma didn't answer. Vance stepped closer. You disappeared after discharge. No forwarding address. No contact with former unit members. Why? Emma met his eyes. I wanted out. Out of what? All of it. Vance's jaw tightened. The dog's name is Titan. His handler was Captain Joel Ramsey, one of the best intelligence operatives we had. They were tracking a weapons smuggling ring operating out of the Seattle docks when an IED took Ramsey out. Titan's been unstable ever since. Because you pulled him too fast, Emma said. Vance's eyes flickered. Excuse me? You extracted him before he had time to process what happened. He's not unstable. He's grieving. Dogs don't grieve. Combat dogs do. The words hung in the air. Vance studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Caldwell. She's taking point on this. Caldwell's mouth fell open. She's a nurse. She's the only person in this room who knows what she's doing. Either she handles it or Titan dies. Your choice. Caldwell looked like she wanted to argue, but the look on Vance's face made it clear the conversation was over. Emma turned back to the table. Titan was watching her, breathing hard, muscles coiled. She could see the fear under the training, the confusion, the loss. She'd seen it before. Too many times. I need everyone to back up, Emma said quietly. Give him space. The tactical guys stepped back. Torres moved toward the door. Caldwell stayed where she was, arms crossed, jaw tight. Emma pulled on a pair of gloves and moved to the table. Slowly, deliberately, every movement visible, no surprises. Hey, soldier, she said softly. I know you're hurting. I know you don't understand what happened, but I need you to trust me, okay? Just for a little while. Titan's ears flicked again. Emma reached for the IV line, not fast, not slow, just steady. Titan's eyes tracked her hand, but he didn't move. She reconnected the line, checked the flow, adjusted the bandage around his torso. The bleeding was bad, worse than she'd thought. He needed surgery, and he needed it soon. But first, he needed to believe he was safe. You did your job, Emma whispered. You protected him as long as you could. You're a good boy. The best. Titan's breathing slowed, just a fraction. But it was enough. Emma looked up at Caldwell. I need a surgical team, now. Caldwell's expression was unreadable. You're not a surgeon. I'm not asking to operate. I'm asking you to let me assist. He won't let anyone else near him. This is insane. This is the only option. Caldwell stared at her. Then finally she turned to Torres. Prep OR2. And get me someone who knows canine anatomy. Torres nodded and bolted. Vance stepped forward. Good. I'll be observing. Emma didn't look at him. No, you won't. Vance's voice went dangerously quiet. That wasn't a request. Emma finally turned to face him. You want him to survive? Then you stay out of that room. He associates you with the mission, with the explosion, with Ramsey dying. You walk in there and he'll fight until his heart stops. Vance's jaw worked. You're telling me I can't oversee my own operation? I'm telling you that if you want this dog alive, you let me do my job. For a moment, Emma thought he was going to pull rank, throw her out, have her arrested. But then slowly Vance stepped back. Fine. But if he dies, this is on you. Emma didn't flinch. If he dies, it's because you rushed the extraction. Vance's eyes went cold. Before he could respond, one of the men in civilian clothes stepped forward. He was younger than Vance, mid-30s, with dark hair and the kind of face that looked like it had seen too much too soon. His ID badge read, Agent Nathan Cross, Department of Defense. Colonel, Cross said quietly, we've got a problem. Vance turned. What? Cross glanced at Emma, then back at Vance. Ramsey's phone. We recovered it from the scene. There's a message he sent 10 minutes before the explosion. To who? His brother. Vance's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. And? Derek Ramsey is en route. He'll be here in 20 minutes. The room temperature seemed to drop. Caldwell looked between them. Who's Derek Ramsey? Cross's voice was flat. Joel Ramsey's older brother. Former Special Forces. Current private military contractor. And the last person we want anywhere near this hospital. Emma's hand stilled on the IV line. She knew that name. She knew exactly who Derek Ramsey was. And if he was coming here, everything was about to get a lot worse. Vance's voice cut through the silence. Lock down the entrances. I don't want him getting near this dog. He's family, Cross said. He has a right. He has nothing. This is a classified operation. If Derek Ramsey sets foot in this hospital, I'll have him arrested for obstruction. Emma looked down at Titan. The dog's eyes were on her, trusting, waiting. She thought about Joel Ramsey bleeding out on the docks, sending a message to his brother with his last conscious moments. She thought about Derek Ramsey, getting that message, knowing his little brother was gone and there was nothing he could do about it. She thought about what she would have done in his place. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that no amount of soldiers or federal agents or locked doors was going to keep Derek Ramsey out of this building. The doors to the trauma bay slammed open. A man walked in, soaked from the rain, wearing a black jacket and jeans. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that looked like it had been carved out of stone and left in the weather to harden. His eyes swept the room, taking in the uniforms, the tactical gear, the dog on the table. Then they landed on Vance. Where's my brother? Vance's voice was steel. You need to leave. Now. Derek Ramsey didn't move. Where is my brother? This is a restricted area. You're not authorized. Derek took a step forward, and every tactical guy in the room tensed. But he didn't reach for a weapon, didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Vance with the kind of calm that came from knowing exactly how much damage he could do if he decided to. I got a text from Joel 23 minutes ago. It said, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Take care of Titan. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is my brother? Vance's jaw tightened. Captain Ramsey was killed in the line of duty. His body is being processed through the appropriate channels. And the dog? Is government property, not your concern. Derek's eyes shifted to Titan. The dog's ears perked up. He made a low rumbling sound, not a growl, not a whine, something in between. Recognition. Derek started toward the table. Stop, Vance ordered. You take one more step, and I'll have you restrained. Derek didn't stop. Two of the tactical guys moved to block him, but Derek didn't even slow down. He just looked at them, and something in his eyes made them hesitate. Emma watched it happen, watched the calculation play out on their faces, watched them realize that if they tried to stop him, it wasn't going to end well. Derek reached the table. Titan's breathing quickened, but he didn't lunge, didn't snap. He just stared at Derek, body tense, waiting. Derek's hand moved slowly, deliberately toward Titan's head. Don't, Vance snapped. He'll take your hand off. Derek ignored him. His fingers brushed Titan's fur just behind the ear. Titan leaned into the touch. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. Derek's voice was low, rough. Hey, buddy, I know. Titan made that sound again. The one that wasn't quite a growl, wasn't quite a whine. The sound of a soldier who'd just lost everything. Derek looked at Emma. You the one who calmed him down? Emma nodded. He trust you? I think so. Derek studied her for a moment. Then he turned to Vance. She's in charge of his care. Not you. Not your people. Her. Vance's face went red. You don't get to give orders here. I'm not giving orders. I'm telling you how this is going to work. Joel trusted this dog with his life. I'm not letting you turn him into a piece of equipment. This animal is part of an ongoing investigation. This animal is all I have left of my brother. The words came out raw, edged with something Emma recognized. Grief disguised as anger. Vance's expression didn't soften, but his voice dropped. I understand your loss, Mr. Ramsey, but this is bigger than... Nothing is bigger than this. Silence. Then Cross stepped forward. Colonel, maybe we should... No, Vance's voice was final. Derek Ramsey is a civilian with no clearance and no authority. He leaves. Now. Derek didn't move. Vance gestured to the tactical guys. Escort him out. They hesitated. That's an order. Slowly, reluctantly, they moved toward Derek. Derek looked at Emma one more time. Keep him alive. It wasn't a request. It was a promise he expected her to keep. Then he turned and walked out. The tactical guys followed, flanking him like they thought he might change his mind. Vance exhaled slowly. Get that dog into surgery. I want updates every 15 minutes. Emma didn't respond. She was still watching the door Derek had walked through, still hearing the weight in his voice when he'd said, "This animal is all I have left of my brother." She turned back to Titan. The dog was watching her, breathing hard again. The brief moment of calm shattered. It's okay, Emma said softly. We're going to fix you up. I promise. But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Fixing Titan wasn't the hard part. The hard part was going to be keeping him alive long enough to figure out why Joel Ramsey had died. And who was lying about it? Because Emma had seen the look in Vance's eyes when Cross mentioned Derek. She'd seen the tension in the tactical guys when they'd carried Titan in. She'd seen the way everyone in this room was acting like they were guarding a secret instead of saving a life. And she knew, from 6 years of watching men in uniforms lie to cover their mistakes, that whatever had happened on those docks wasn't just an accident. It was a cover-up, and she was standing right in the middle of it. The surgical suite at St. Catherine's wasn't built for this. Emma stood at the scrub sink, forearms burning under scalding water, watching through the observation window as Torres and 2 surgical nurses prepped the table. Titan was already under, barely. The anesthesiologist, a gray-haired woman named Dr. Patel, had needed 3 attempts and twice the normal dosage to get him down. And even now his vitals were all over the place. Emma dried her hands and pushed through the door. Caldwell was already gowned up, standing at the head of the table with her arms crossed. She didn't look at Emma. I want it on record that this is against my medical judgment. Noted, Emma said. We're not equipped for veterinary surgery. We don't have the right instruments, the right protocols. Then we improvise. Caldwell finally looked at her. You've been here 6 months and barely said 10 words. Now you're giving orders? Emma pulled on her gloves. You want me to leave? Caldwell's jaw worked. No. Then let's work. The next 2 hours were a blur of blood, sutures, and Titan's erratic heartbeat on the monitor. The shrapnel wounds were worse than they'd looked, deep lacerations across his rib cage, one piece lodged near his spine. Emma worked alongside Caldwell, handing instruments, adjusting retractors, calling out vitals when Patel's hands were full. And the whole time, Vance stood in the observation room above, watching. Emma could feel his eyes on her, calculating, measuring, waiting for her to make a mistake. She didn't. By the time they closed, Titan's vitals had stabilized. Not great, but stable. Patel reduced the anesthesia and stepped back, wiping her forehead. That's all I can do. The rest is up to him. Caldwell stripped off her gloves. Move him to recovery. Keep him monitored. Emma stayed at the table, one hand resting lightly on Titan's side. His breathing was shallow but steady. She could feel the rise and fall of his ribs under her palm. He'll make it, she said quietly. Caldwell paused at the door. You can't know that. Yeah, I can. Caldwell stared at her for a moment, then walked out. Torres lingered. That was impressive. Where'd you learn to assist like that? Emma didn't answer. Torres got the message and left. Emma stood there alone with Titan, listening to the rhythmic beep of the monitor, and thought about Joel Ramsey bleeding out on the docks while his dog fought to get back to him. She thought about Derek Ramsey's face when he touched Titan's head. She thought about Vance's eyes in the observation room. And she thought about the lie she'd told 6 years ago when she'd walked away from the army. The door opened behind her. Hartley, Vance's voice. Emma turned. He stood in the doorway, still in his uniform, still radiating authority. We need to talk, he said. About what? About why you lied to me. Emma's stomach tightened, but she kept her face neutral. I didn't lie. You said you weren't military. I said I wasn't military anymore. That's not a lie. Vance stepped into the room. You were part of the 47th Combat Medical Unit. Specialized canine rehabilitation. You worked with dogs like Titan every day. I worked with dogs who came back broken. Yeah. And you left. I did. Why? Emma looked down at Titan. Because I got tired of watching them get broken in the first place. Vance was quiet for a moment. You think we broke him? I think you pulled him off a mission before he had time to process what happened. I think you treated him like equipment instead of a soldier. And yeah, I think that broke him. We didn't have a choice. The operation was compromised. There's always a choice. Vance's expression hardened. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I spent 3 years putting dogs back together after people like you decided their lives were disposable. People like me keep this country safe. By lying to the families of the men who die for you? The words hung in the air. Vance's eyes went cold. Careful, Hartley. Emma met his gaze. Derek Ramsey knows something's wrong. You saw his face. He's not going to let this go. Derek Ramsey is a civilian. Derek Ramsey is a former Special Forces operator who just lost his brother. You think a couple of tactical guys and a locked door are going to stop him? Vance stepped closer. You're out of line. I'm telling you the truth. The truth is that Joel Ramsey died in a classified operation, and this dog is the only surviving witness. We need him alive to finish the investigation. Then stop treating him like evidence and start treating him like a victim. Vance's jaw tightened. I don't take orders from nurses. You did 2 hours ago. For a moment, Emma thought he was going to pull rank, throw her out, have her removed from the case. But then his radio crackled. Colonel Vance, this is perimeter security. We have a situation. Vance grabbed the radio. What situation? Derek Ramsey. He's back. And he's not alone. Vance's face went dark. How many? 4. All armed. All with military backgrounds. Where are they? Main entrance. They're demanding access to the trauma bay. Vance swore under his breath and keyed the radio. Lock it down. Nobody gets through. Sir, they're threatening legal action. They say they have a right. I don't care what they say. Nobody gets through. Vance clipped the radio back to his belt and looked at Emma. Stay here. Don't let anyone near that dog. Where are you going? To remind Derek Ramsey that this is still my operation. He walked out. Emma stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of his boots echoing down the hallway. Then she looked at Titan. The dog was still unconscious, still breathing steadily, but something about the set of his body had changed. Like even in sleep, he could sense the tension in the air. Emma pulled up a chair and sat down next to the table. You've got people fighting over you, she said softly. People who think they own you. People who think they know what's best for you, but nobody's asking what you need. Titan's ear twitched. Emma leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. She'd been in rooms like this before. Rooms where the only sound was the beep of a monitor and the rasp of a dog's breathing. Rooms where she'd sat with animals who'd been through hell and didn't understand why. She'd left because she couldn't do it anymore. Because every time she looked at those dogs, she saw the same thing. Soldiers who'd been trained to give everything, used until they broke, and then discarded when they couldn't perform anymore. And she'd realized that the people giving the orders didn't care. They never had. 20 minutes later, the door burst open. Emma was on her feet before her brain caught up. Derek Ramsey stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 men in tactical gear. He looked like he'd walked through a hurricane, hair wet, jaw tight, eyes burning. Where's Vance? Emma stepped between him and the table. Trying to keep you out. Didn't work. I can see that. Derek's eyes shifted to Titan. How is he? Stable. Barely. He lost a lot of blood. Derek moved toward the table. Emma didn't stop him. He stood there for a moment, looking at Titan's bandaged torso, the IV lines, the monitors. He's going to make it. If he wants to. Derek's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Emma crossed her arms. It means he just watched his handler die. It means he doesn't understand why. It means he's been ripped away from everything familiar and shoved into a hospital full of strangers who are treating him like a piece of equipment. So yeah, he might survive the surgery. But surviving and living are 2 different things. Derek stared at her. You talk like you know him. I know dogs like him. How? Emma hesitated. Then, I used to work with them. In the Army. Derek's eyes narrowed. What unit? 47th Combat Medical. K9 Rehab. Yeah. Derek studied her for a long moment. Why'd you leave? Because the Army doesn't care about rehab. They care about return-to-duty rates. And when the dogs couldn't return to duty? Emma didn't answer. She didn't have to. Derek looked back at Titan. Joel loved this dog. He told me once that Titan saved his life more times than he could count. Said he trusted him more than anyone in his unit. Sounds like Joel was smart. Joel was the best. Derek's voice went rough. And somebody killed him. Emma's pulse quickened. You think it wasn't an accident? I know it wasn't. How? Derek pulled out his phone and swiped through a few screens. Then he held it up. On the screen was a text message. Joel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. They compromised the op. Vance knew. Take care of Titan. Emma's blood went cold. Vance knew, she said slowly, about the IED, about the ambush, about all of it. Derek's voice was flat, controlled. Joel sent me that message 10 minutes before the explosion. He knew something was wrong. He knew they'd been set up. And Vance still sent them in. Vance didn't just send them in. He ordered Joel to proceed even after Joel reported the site was compromised. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. Why? That's what I'm going to find out. How? Derek looked at her. Joel kept records, audio logs, photos, everything. He didn't trust the chain of command, so he documented every mission, and he uploaded it all to a secure server. Where? I don't know yet, but Titan does. Emma blinked. What? Derek stepped closer to the table. Joel trained Titan to carry a backup drive on all field ops. It's embedded in his collar, encrypted, biometric lock. Emma looked at Titan's neck. The collar was gone, probably cut off during surgery. Where's his collar? That's what I'm here to find out. Behind them, the door slammed open again. Vance walked in, flanked by 4 soldiers in full tactical gear. His face was stone. Derek Ramsey, you're under arrest for trespassing on a restricted military operation. Derek didn't move. You killed my brother. Your brother died in the line of duty. My brother died because you ignored his intel and sent him into an ambush. Vance's expression didn't change. I don't know what you think you know. Say, I know Joel sent me a message before he died. I know you ordered him to proceed even after he reported the site was compromised, and I know you're covering it up. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Vance gestured to the soldiers. Remove him. They moved forward. Derek's 2 men stepped in front of him, hands on their weapons. The room went tense. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Stop. Everyone looked at her. This is a hospital, she said. You start shooting in here, and Titan dies. Is that what you want? Vance's jaw tightened. This doesn't concern you, Hartley. It does when you're about to turn my patient into collateral damage. Your patient is government property. Your patient is a living being who's been through hell. And if you escalate this, you're no better than the people who put him there. Vance stared at her. Derek spoke up. Where's Titan's collar? Vance didn't answer. Where is his collar? In evidence lockup, where it belongs. That collar has information on it that proves you got my brother killed. That collar is classified property. That collar is the only thing standing between you and a court-martial. Vance's face went red. You have no authority here, no clearance, no legal standing. If you don't leave right now, I will have you arrested, tried, and imprisoned for obstruction of a federal investigation. Derek's voice was ice. Try it. The soldiers raised their weapons. Derek's men did the same. Emma's mind raced. She looked at Titan, still unconscious, still breathing. She thought about Joel Ramsey, dying on the docks, knowing his brother would come for the truth. She thought about Derek, standing here with a gun pointed at him, refusing to back down. And she thought about what would happen if Vance got his way. The collar would disappear. The evidence would be buried. Joel's death would be written off as a tragic accident, and Derek would spend the rest of his life knowing his brother had been murdered and there was nothing he could do about it. Emma made a decision. I have the collar. Every head in the room turned toward her. Vance's eyes narrowed. What? I have the collar. I took it before they logged it into evidence. Derek stared at her. Why? Because I knew something was wrong. I knew dogs like Titan don't react the way he did unless something traumatic happened, and I knew the Army would rather bury the truth than admit they made a mistake. Vance's voice was dangerous. You stole evidence from a federal investigation. I secured it. There's a difference. Where is it? Emma didn't answer. Vance stepped closer. Where is it? Emma met his eyes. Somewhere you'll never find it. Vance's hand moved to his sidearm. You're making a very big mistake. No, you made the mistake. 6 years ago when you decided dogs like Titan were disposable. And tonight, when you decided Joel Ramsey was too. Vance's jaw tightened. I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is the collar? Emma's pulse was hammering, but she kept her voice steady. You want it? Let Derek take Titan. Let him finish what Joel started. And maybe I'll tell you. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. Because right now, I'm the only person standing between you and a scandal that ends your career. The room went silent. Vance stared at her, and for a moment Emma thought he was going to shoot her himself, but then Cross stepped forward from the hallway. Colonel, we have a bigger problem. Vance didn't take his eyes off Emma. What? The press is here. Someone tipped them off about the explosion. They're asking about casualties. Vance swore under his breath. How many? All the major outlets, CNN, NBC, local affiliates. They're camped outside the main entrance. Vance's face went pale. Emma saw the calculation play out in his eyes. If the press got wind of what was really going on, if they found out a soldier had died because his commanding officer ignored intel, Vance's career was over. His reputation was over. Everything was over. And Emma was betting on that. Vance turned to Derek. You and your men leave. Now, no arrests, no charges. But you stay away from this dog and stay away from this investigation. Derek's voice was flat. No, that wasn't a negotiation. Neither is this. I'm not leaving without Titan. That dog is not yours. That dog is all I have left of my brother, and I'm not letting you turn him into another cover-up. Vance's hand tightened on his sidearm. Emma stepped forward. You pull that gun, and I go straight to the press. I tell them everything. The message Joel sent, the caller, the evidence you're trying to bury, all of it. Vance's eyes burned into hers. You'd destroy your own career? I don't have a career. I have a job. And right now my job is keeping that dog alive. So yeah, I'd burn it all down if it meant doing the right thing. Vance stared at her for a long, cold moment. Then he lowered his hand. Fine. Derek Ramsey, you're free to go. But you leave the dog here until he's medically cleared. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but Emma cut him off. Deal. Derek looked at her like she'd just stabbed him in the back, but Emma kept her eyes on Vance. He stays here under my supervision. No military personnel in the room. No interference. When he is stable, Derek takes him, and you get your collar back. Vance's jaw worked. And the drive? Stays with Derek because if anything happens to him or Titan, that drive goes public. Vance looked like he wanted to kill her, but he nodded. Fine. He turned and walked out, his soldiers following. Cross lingered in the doorway for a moment, looking at Emma with something that might have been respect. Then he left too. The door closed. Derek exhaled slowly. You just made a deal with the devil. I made a deal that keeps Titan alive. You think Vance is going to honor it? No, but I think he's scared enough of the press to play along for now. Derek looked at Titan. How long until he can move? 48 hours. Maybe less if he heals fast. And you really have the collar. Emma walked over to her locker in the corner of the room and pulled out a plastic bag. Inside was Titan's collar, black nylon, reinforced, with a small metal compartment embedded in the lining. Derek took it, his hand shaking slightly. He opened the compartment. Inside was a thumbnail-sized drive. Derek's eyes went dark. Joel, you beautiful bastard! Emma watched him. What's on it? Everything, audio logs, photos, GPS coordinates, proof that Vance knew the mission was compromised and sent Joel in anyway. Why would he do that? Derek looked up at her. Because the operation wasn't about stopping a weapons smuggling ring. It was about covering one up. Emma's stomach dropped. What? Joel found out that the people running the smuggling operation were connected to someone inside Army intelligence, someone high up, someone Vance was protecting. Who? Derek shook his head. Joel didn't say, but he knew enough to get himself killed. Emma felt the weight of it settle over her. And now Vance thinks you have the evidence. I do have the evidence, which means he's going to come after you. Let him. Emma stepped closer. Derek, you don't understand. Vance isn't just going to arrest you. He's going to make you disappear. Then I'd better move fast. You need protection, legal protection. Go to the press. Go to Congress. Go to someone who can... I don't have time. By the time I wade through bureaucracy, everyone involved will have covered their tracks and destroyed the evidence. So what are you going to do? Derek looked at her. I'm going to finish what Joel started, and I'm going to need your help. Emma's chest tightened. I'm a nurse, not a soldier. You were a soldier, and you're the only person in this building Titan trusts. That doesn't mean... Emma. Derek's voice softened. Joel died trying to expose corruption that's getting people killed. If we don't finish this, his death means nothing, and Titan becomes just another casualty in a war that doesn't care about him. Emma looked at Titan, still unconscious, still fighting. She thought about the dogs she'd worked with, the ones who'd survived, the ones who hadn't. She thought about why she'd left the army, and she thought about what would happen if she walked away now. What do you need me to do? She said quietly. Derek pulled out his phone. Joel encrypted the drive with a biometric lock. It needs two things to unlock: a fingerprint scan and a voice recognition code. The fingerprint is mine. The voice code is Titan's. Emma blinked. How the hell do you get a voice code from a dog? You don't. You get it from the handler, but Joel's gone. So we need someone who can mimic the command structure well enough to trick the system. And you think I can do that? You used a tactical command on Titan that even Vance's people didn't know. That means you know the protocols, the phrasing, the tone. Emma's mind raced. Even if I could, we can't unlock it here. Vance has this place locked down. Then we move Titan. He just had surgery. Moving him could kill him. Leaving him here will definitely kill him. The second Vance realizes I have the drive, he's going to take Titan and disappear. And you're never going to see either of us again. Emma's hands clenched. Where would we take him? I have a safe house, off the grid, medical supplies, everything you'd need to keep him stable. And when Vance realizes we're gone, he won't, not until it's too late. Emma looked at Titan. His breathing was steady. His vitals were stable, but he was fragile. One wrong move, one complication, and he'd crash. This is insane, she said. Yeah. We could both end up in prison. Or worse. Emma exhaled slowly. When? Tonight. 3 a.m. Security shift change. Minimal personnel. And how do we get past Vance's people? Derek smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Leave that to me. Emma wanted to say no, wanted to walk away, wanted to go back to being the quiet nurse who kept her head down and didn't get involved. But when she looked at Titan, she saw every dog she'd ever worked with, every soldier who'd been used and discarded, every person who'd been told their life didn't matter as much as the mission. And she knew she couldn't walk away, not this time. Okay, she said, but if he dies, it's on you. Derek's expression went serious. If he dies, it's on all of us. He turned and walked toward the door. His two men followed. Emma watched them leave, then turned back to Titan. The dog's eyes were open, just barely, just a sliver of dark iris, unfocused and hazy from the drugs. But he was watching her. Hey, soldier, Emma whispered. Looks like we're going on a trip. Titan's ear twitched. Emma sat down in the chair and rested her hand on his side, and waited for 3 a.m. 2 hours later, the door opened. Emma was on her feet instantly, but it wasn't Derek, it was Caldwell. She stood in the doorway, still in her scrubs, looking exhausted. We need to talk. Emma's pulse quickened. About what? Caldwell stepped inside and closed the door. About what you're planning to do. Emma's stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Hartley. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know when someone's about to do something stupid. Emma didn't respond. Caldwell crossed her arms. Derek Ramsey asked one of the transport nurses about ambulance routes out of the building. Security logged an equipment request for a mobile ventilator and portable monitors. And you've been sitting in this room for 2 hours like you're waiting for something. Emma's jaw tightened. If you're here to stop me. I'm here to help you. Emma blinked. What? Caldwell walked over to the table and looked at Titan. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what Vance is hiding, but I know that dog didn't get those injuries from a normal explosion. I know Joel Ramsey's death is being covered up. And I know you're the only person in this building who gives a damn about doing the right thing. Emma stared at her. You could lose your job. I could lose more than that. Caldwell met her eyes. But I didn't become a doctor to stand by while people in uniforms decide who lives and who dies based on what's convenient for them. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. So here's what's going to happen, Caldwell continued. At 2:45 a.m., I'm going to pull the fire alarm on the 3rd floor. That'll draw security away from this wing for at least 10 minutes. You'll have a window. Use it. Why are you doing this? Caldwell's expression softened. Because 20 years ago, I stood in a room like this and let someone tell me that doing the right thing wasn't worth the risk, and I've regretted it every day since. She turned and walked toward the door. Caldwell. The doctor stopped. Thank you. Caldwell didn't look back. Don't thank me. Just don't get caught. She left. Emma stood there, heart hammering, mind racing. At 2:45 a.m., the fire alarm screamed to life. Emma moved before the echo of the alarm faded. She disconnected the monitors first, oxygen saturation, heart rate, blood pressure, silencing each one with quick, practiced movements. Titan's eyes opened, clouded with pain and confusion, but he didn't fight when she adjusted the IV pole and locked the wheels on the gurney. The hallway outside erupted with voices. Footsteps pounded toward the 3rd floor. Security protocols demanded evacuation of patients, which meant she had minutes, maybe less, before someone circled back. Derek appeared in the doorway with one of his men, a compact guy with a shaved head and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. No words. Derek moved to the head of the gurney while Emma stayed at Titan's side, one hand on his chest to keep him calm. They pushed through the door and into the corridor. The fire alarm shrieked. Red emergency lights strobed. A nurse Emma didn't recognize ran past them toward the stairs, not even glancing their direction. They moved fast but not frantic, just another medical team evacuating a critical patient during a drill. Except this wasn't a drill. They reached the service elevator. Derek's guy, Emma heard him called Price, jammed a key into the override panel. The doors opened. They rolled Titan inside and Price hit the button for the basement loading dock. The doors closed. The alarm became muffled. Emma checked Titan's vitals manually. Pulse thready but steady, breathing shallow. His eyes tracked her face, and she could see the question in them, the confusion. He didn't understand why he was moving, why everything smelled wrong, why his body hurt. Easy, she whispered. We're getting you somewhere safe. Titan's tail twitched. Not a wag, just acknowledgement. The elevator lurched downward. Derek checked his phone. Caldwell bought us 8 minutes, maybe 9. Security's focused on the 3rd floor, but Vance has 2 guys stationed at the main entrance and 1 at the ER bay. What about the loading dock? Emma asked. Should be clear, should. That's not reassuring. Nothing about this is reassuring. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a concrete hallway lined with industrial piping and flickering fluorescent lights. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of diesel and rain. Emma's breath misted. They moved. Price led the way, weapon drawn but held low. Derek pushed the gurney. Emma stayed at Titan's side, one hand on the IV pole, the other resting on the dog's shoulder. Her scrubs offered zero protection against the cold, and her arms prickled with goosebumps, but she didn't slow down. The loading dock was 50 yards ahead. Emma could see the metal door, the red exit sign above it, the rain hammering the pavement beyond. They were 30 yards out when the door opened. A security guard stepped through, mid-conversation on his radio. He looked up, saw them, froze. Price moved first. He closed the distance in 3 strides, weapon rising, and the guard's hand went to his sidearm. Don't, Price said. The guard's fingers hovered over the holster. His eyes flicked from Price to Derek to Emma, calculating, weighing odds. This doesn't have to go bad, Derek said. We're leaving. You let us walk and nobody gets hurt. The guard's jaw tightened. I can't do that. You can. You just don't want to. Colonel Vance ordered you to stand here and do your job, not to die for it. The guard's hand moved. Price's weapon snapped up. Emma's heart slammed into her throat. Stop. Everyone looked at her. She stepped forward, putting herself between Price and the guard. You're hospital security, right? Not military. The guard nodded slowly. Then you know me. Emma Hartley. I work in the trauma bay. I've been here 6 months. I know who you are. Good. Then you know I'm not a threat. And you know this dog just had surgery. He's critical. We're moving him to a facility that can give him the care he needs. Colonel Vance said, Colonel Vance doesn't care if this dog lives or dies. I do. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to step aside. You're going to let us leave. And when they ask you what happened, you're going to say we pulled a gun on you and you had no choice. The guard stared at her. They'll fire me. They'll fire you if you let us go. They'll put you in a hospital bed if you don't. The guard's eyes shifted to Price's weapon, then back to Emma. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Emma's chest tightened. Then make sure you see her again. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the guard stepped aside. Radio's on the floor, he said. I'm walking to the other end of the hall. I didn't see anything. Derek nodded. Smart man. The guard set his radio down and walked away, hands visible, not looking back. Price lowered his weapon. They pushed through the door into the rain. A white cargo van sat idling 20 feet away, rear doors open. Derek's second man, a wiry guy with a scarred forearm, jumped out and helped lift the gurney into the back. Emma climbed in after it, crouching in the narrow space between equipment crates and the van's wall. Derek and Price piled in. The doors slammed shut. The van lurched forward. Emma grabbed the gurney to keep it from sliding. Titan whimpered, a low sound that made her chest ache. She adjusted the IV line, checked the bandages. Blood was seeping through the gauze. Not a lot, but enough to worry her. How far? She called to the driver. 20 minutes, the driver shouted back. Maybe 15 if traffic's clear. Emma pressed her palm against Titan's side. His heartbeat was fast, irregular. The stress of movement was taking a toll. She needed to stabilize him, but the van was bouncing over potholes and she had no room to work. Derek crouched next to her. What do you need? A hospital. Can't do that. Then I need him to stay calm, and I need you to tell me what we're walking into. Derek pulled out his phone and opened a map. Safe house is in Fremont, industrial area. Owner's a friend who doesn't ask questions. It's got a clean room set up for medical work, table, lights, supplies. Used to be a veterinary clinic before it shut down. Used to be? 3 years ago. Emma's stomach sank. So the equipment's old. The equipment's there. That's more than we had 10 minutes ago. Emma looked at Titan. His eyes were half closed, his breathing labored. She thought about what Caldwell had said, about doing the right thing, about living with regret. If he crashes, I can't bring him back, she said. Not without a full surgical suite. He's not going to crash. You don't know that. Derek met her eyes. No. But I know if we'd stayed, Vance would have put a bullet in him the second he had the chance. At least this way, he's got a shot. Emma didn't respond. She turned back to Titan, adjusting his position to keep pressure off the surgical site. The dog's eyes opened, locking onto hers. And in that moment, Emma saw what she'd seen in every combat dog she'd ever worked with. Trust. Not because he understood what was happening, not because he thought she could fix everything, but because she was there. And that was enough. The van hit a pothole. Titan yelped. Emma's hand shot out to steady him, but his back leg spasmed and his breathing went ragged. Drive smoother, she shouted. Trying, the driver yelled back. The rain hammered the roof. Emma could hear sirens in the distance, police, ambulance, maybe both. She didn't know if they were for her or for something else, but every wail made her pulse spike. Price was on his phone, speaking in clipped sentences. Yeah, we're clear. ETA 12 minutes. He paused. I know. We'll handle it. Another pause. Affirmative. He hung up and looked at Derek. Vance knows. Derek's jaw tightened. How? Guard must have called it in. or someone saw us on the cameras. Either way, he's mobilized a response team. How many? Enough. Emma's hand stilled on Titan's IV line. What does that mean? Derek didn't sugarcoat it. It means when we get to the safe house, we're going to have company. How much time do we have? Not enough. Emma's mind raced. They needed to unlock the drive. They needed to get the evidence. They needed to do it before Vance's people showed up and turned this into a bloodbath. Can we unlock it in the van? Derek shook his head. The biometric scanner needs a stable surface and controlled conditions. Too much vibration throws off the reader. Then we unlock it the second we get there. We need Titan awake for the voice recognition. Emma looked at the dog. He was barely conscious. Waking him up fully would require reducing the pain meds, which would cause agony. And if his stress levels spiked too high, his heart could give out. How critical is the voice recognition? She asked. It's the second layer of security. Without it, the drive stays locked. And if we don't get it? Then Joel died for nothing. Emma's chest tightened. She looked at Titan, then at Derek. If I wake him up too fast, he could crash. If I don't, we lose the evidence. Either way, someone loses. Derek's voice was quiet. Then you pick who? Emma hated him for saying it. Hated that he was right. Hated that she was the one who had to make the call. She thought about Joel Ramsey, bleeding out on the docks, sending a message to his brother with his last moments. She thought about the dogs she'd worked with who hadn't survived because someone had decided their lives were expendable. She thought about the truth buried on that drive, the truth that could save lives or condemn them. And she made her choice. We wake him up, she said, but we do it controlled, small doses, just enough to get the response we need. Derek nodded. How long? 5 minutes after we arrive, maybe less. The van turned sharply. Emma grabbed the gurney again, steadying it. Through the windshield, she could see the industrial buildings of Fremont, rusted metal, cracked pavement, chain-link fences sagging under years of neglect. The van pulled into an alley and stopped in front of a low concrete building with boarded windows and a faded sign that read, Fremont Animal Care. The rear doors opened. Cold air rushed in. Derek and Price lifted the gurney out, and Emma jumped down after them, her sneakers splashing in a puddle. The driver, Emma finally got a look at him, older, graying beard, unlocked the side door and pushed it open. Inside was darkness and the smell of old disinfectant. He flipped a switch. Overhead lights buzzed to life, revealing a space that looked like it had been frozen in time. Exam table in the center, cabinets along the walls. A rolling tray of instruments covered in dust. Not exactly state-of-the-art, Emma muttered. It'll do, Derek said. They moved Titan onto the table. Emma immediately started checking him over. Pulse, breathing, surgical site. The bleeding had slowed, but his vitals were weaker than she liked. She grabbed supplies from the cabinets, wiping down instruments, pulling together what she needed. Price stationed himself at the front window. The driver took the back. Derek set the encrypted drive on a clean towel next to Titan and pulled out a fingerprint scanner. Emma drew up a syringe of reversal agent. Not enough to fully wake Titan, just enough to bring him up to a level where he could respond. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. Ready? Derek asked. No. Do it anyway. Emma injected the agent into Titan's IV line. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Titan's eyes opened. Fully. His head lifted off the table, and he made a low, confused sound. His body tensed, trying to stand, but Emma put a hand on his chest. Easy. Stay down. Titan's eyes found hers, confused, frightened, in pain. I know, she said softly. I'm sorry, but I need you to do something for me. Derek positioned the fingerprint scanner next to Titan's collar, the one Emma had hidden. He pressed his thumb to the scanner. It beeped. A green light flashed. First layer's open, Derek said. Now we need the voice code. Emma looked at Titan. The command Joel used. What was it? Verteidigen. Emma's German wasn't perfect, but she knew the word. Defend. She leaned close to Titan. Verteidigen. Titan stared at her. Nothing happened. Try again, Derek said. Maybe the tone's wrong. Emma repeated it, slower, firmer. Verteidigen. Titan's ear twitched, but the scanner didn't respond. Derek swore under his breath. The system's not recognizing it. It needs Titan's vocalization, not yours. You said voice recognition code. I thought, it's not a handler command. It's an activation bark. Joel trained Titan to bark in a specific pattern when the collar's activated. The system reads the pattern and unlocks. Emma stared at him. You're telling me we need the dog to bark on command? Yeah. And you didn't mention this earlier because I didn't think it would be a problem. Joel could get Titan to bark anytime. Emma's jaw tightened. Joel's dead. I know. Emma looked at Titan. The dog was trembling, eyes darting around the unfamiliar space. He was scared, hurting, and she was supposed to get him to perform a trained behavior in the middle of a crisis. She thought back to her training, to the dogs she'd worked with, to the techniques she'd used to rebuild their trust after trauma. Titan wasn't just a trained weapon. He was a partner, and partners responded to patterns. I need something of Joel's, Emma said. Something Titan would recognize. Derek frowned. Like what? Clothing, a scent, anything. Derek pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. He stopped on one, Joel in tactical gear, grinning, with Titan sitting next to him. Derek's hand tightened on the phone. I don't have anything. Emma's mind raced. The collar. Joel would have handled it every day, his scent still on it. Derek grabbed the collar and held it near Titan's nose. The dog's nostrils flared, his body stilled, and for a moment Emma saw recognition flash in his eyes. Good, she whispered. Now we need the activation cue. What did Joel do to trigger the bark? Derek thought. He'd tapped the collar. 3 times. Fast. Emma took the collar and tapped it. 1, 2, 3. Titan's ears perked. Emma tapped again. 1, 2, 3. Titan's mouth opened. A single bark. Short, sharp. The scanner beeped. The green light flashed. The drive unlocked. Derek exhaled hard. Got it. He pulled out a laptop and plugged in the drive. The screen filled with files, audio logs, photos, GPS coordinates, encrypted messages. Emma watched over his shoulder as Derek scrolled through them, his face growing darker with each file. What is it? Emma asked. Derek opened an audio file. Joel's voice filled the room. August 14th. Mission log. We've been tracking the weapons shipments for 3 weeks. The intel checks out. High-grade military equipment moving through the docks. But something's wrong. The buyers aren't foreign operatives. They're domestic. And the seller's name keeps getting redacted from every report I file. Derek opened another file. A photo. Military crates stacked in a warehouse. Serial numbers visible. August 19th. I confronted Vance. Asked him why the seller's identity is being hidden. He said it's classified, but I ran the serial numbers on the weapons. They're ours. U.S. Army issue. Reported stolen 6 months ago from a base in Texas. Emma's blood went cold. Derek opened another file. Joel's voice was tense now. August 22nd. Vance ordered me to stand down. Said the investigation's being handled at a higher level. But I followed the money trail. The weapons aren't being sold to enemies. They're being sold to private contractors. And the person authorizing the sales, it's someone inside Army intelligence. Someone Vance is protecting. Derek's hands shook as he opened the final file. A photo. A man in a military uniform, shaking hands with someone in a suit. The man's face was partially obscured, but his rank insignia was visible. Major General, August 28th. I know who it is. Major General Hollis Crane. He's been selling U.S. military equipment to private contractors for years. Vance is his fixer. They've been covering it up, burying evidence, silencing anyone who gets too close. I reported it up the chain, but nothing's happening. I think they know. I think they're coming for me. The audio stopped. Derek stared at the screen, his face pale. Hollis Crane. He's the deputy chief of Army intelligence. Emma's chest tightened. And if this goes public, it'll destroy the entire command structure. Price's voice cut through from the window. We've got company. Derek's head snapped up. How many? 4 vehicles, maybe 5. They're blocking the exits. Derek grabbed the laptop and shoved it into a backpack. We're leaving. Emma looked at Titan. The dog was barely holding on. He can't move. Not like this. He doesn't have a choice. Derek, if we stay here, Vance kills all of us and buries this evidence. If we run, maybe we get out. Maybe. Emma's mind raced. She thought about the surgical site, the blood loss, The stressed Titan's body was already under. If we move him, he'll bleed out. If we don't, he's dead anyway. Emma hated that he was right, hated that every option led to loss. She grabbed the IV pole. Then we moved fast. They lifted Titan off the table. He whimpered, his body rigid with pain, but he didn't fight. Derek and Price carried him toward the back door while Emma kept the IV line steady and the driver led the way. They pushed through the door into the alley. Headlights snapped on. 3 black SUVs blocked the far end. Tactical personnel poured out, weapons raised, moving with the precision of people who'd done this 1,000 times. And standing at the center of them, illuminated by the headlights, was Colonel Vance. His voice carried across the alley. "Derek Ramsey, Emma Hartley, you're both under arrest." Derek's hand moved to his weapon. "Don't," Vance said. "You're outgunned and outnumbered. This ends one way." Emma's pulse hammered. She looked at Titan, trembling and bleeding on the gurney. She looked at Derek, jaw tight, calculating odds that didn't add up. She looked at the tactical team, fingers on triggers, waiting for the order. And she realized that the only way this ended without bloodshed was if she gave Vance what he wanted. She stepped forward. "Let them go." Vance's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "Let Derek and Titan go. You can have me. I'll take full responsibility." "Emma, don't—" Derek started. "Shut up." Emma kept her eyes on Vance. "You want someone to blame, someone to prosecute. Fine. Blame me. But the dog and Derek leave." Vance studied her. "You think you're a hero?" "I think I'm the only person here who gives a damn about doing the right thing. The right thing is following orders. The right thing is exposing corruption, even when it's coming from the top." Vance's expression didn't change. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know Joel Ramsey found proof that Major General Crane has been selling U.S. military weapons. I know you've been covering it up, and I know you killed Joel to keep it quiet." The alley went silent. Vance's jaw tightened. "You're making serious accusations." "I'm stating facts. Facts require evidence." Emma pulled the collar out of her pocket and held it up. "This is evidence. And if anything happens to us, it goes public." Vance's eyes locked onto the collar. "Give it to me." "No. That's government property. That's proof that you're a murderer." Vance's hand moved to his sidearm. "Last chance." Emma didn't flinch. "You shoot me, and this whole thing blows up. Derek's already sent copies to journalists, to Congress, to people you can't touch. You kill us, and you lose." Vance stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You think I'm scared of journalists? Of Congress? I've been cleaning up messes like this for 20 years. You know what happens to people who threaten me? They disappear. And nobody asks questions." Emma's blood went cold. Vance raised his weapon. And in that moment, Emma realized she'd miscalculated. She'd thought Vance was smart enough to back down, to cut his losses, to protect himself. But Vance wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting Crane. And people like Vance didn't back down. They buried the problem. Derek moved first. He grabbed Emma and yanked her behind the gurney as gunfire erupted. The sound was deafening. Bullets tore through metal and concrete. Price returned fire from behind a dumpster. The driver went down, clutching his leg. Titan thrashed on the gurney, eyes wild, trying to stand despite the pain. Emma's ears rang. Her hand shook. She pressed herself against the gurney, trying to shield Titan, trying to think, trying to breathe. Derek was shouting something, but she couldn't hear him over the gunfire. Then suddenly, the shooting stopped. Emma looked up. New headlights flooded the alley, a convoy of vehicles, marked official, flashing red and blue. Federal vehicles. Agents poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. And at the front of them was Agent Cross. His voice cut through the chaos. "Colonel Marcus Vance, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit murder, and treason." Vance's face went white. Cross stepped forward, flanked by federal agents. "We've been monitoring this operation for 3 months. We know about Crane. We know about the weapons sales. And we know you killed Joel Ramsey to cover it up." Vance's weapon lowered. "You can't prove that." Cross held up a tablet. "Joel Ramsey's encrypted drive, delivered to the FBI 2 hours ago by Derek Ramsey. Every file, every audio log, every piece of evidence. Emma's heart stopped. She looked at Derek. He met her eyes. I sent copies before we left the hospital. Vance's jaw worked. This is a military matter. This is a federal investigation, Cross said. And you're done. Federal agents moved in. Vance's weapon was taken. His hands were cuffed. And as they led him away, he looked at Emma one last time. You have no idea what you've started, he said quietly. Emma didn't respond. She turned to Titan. The dog was still on the gurney, still bleeding, still trembling, but his eyes were on her, trusting. Emma put her hand on his side. You're okay, she whispered. We're okay. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true, because standing at the edge of the alley, watching from the shadows, was someone Emma hadn't seen in 6 years, someone she'd left the army to escape, someone who shouldn't have known she was here. Major General Hollis Crane stepped into the light, his face calm, his uniform immaculate, and when he looked at Emma, he smiled. Emma's entire body went cold. Crane looked exactly as she remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and the kind of face that belonged on recruitment posters. He wore his uniform like armor, every crease perfect, every ribbon aligned. But it was his eyes that made her stomach drop, calm, calculating. The eyes of a man who'd watched people die and filed the paperwork without losing sleep. Cross stepped forward, hand moving to his sidearm. General Crane, you shouldn't be here. Crane's smile didn't waver. I'm exactly where I need to be, Agent Cross, cleaning up another mess. This is a federal crime scene. You have no jurisdiction. I have every jurisdiction. This investigation involves stolen military property, compromised intelligence operations, and the death of one of my officers. That makes it my concern. Emma's hands were still on Titan. The dog's breathing had gone shallow, his eyes tracking Crane with the kind of focus that came from recognizing a threat. Derek moved beside her, positioning himself between Crane and the gurney. Cross didn't back down. Colonel Vance is in federal custody. The evidence against you is already being processed. You need to leave before I add obstruction to the charges. Crane's expression shifted. Not angry, amused. Charges? Based on what? Audio files from a dead man? Photos that could have been doctored? You'll need more than that to touch me. We have financial records, wire transfers, communication logs between you and the buyers. Circumstantial. Any decent lawyer will tear that apart in court. We have Joel Ramsey's testimony. Joel Ramsey is dead. The words landed like a slap. Cross's jaw tightened, but Crane just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, radiating the kind of authority that came from decades of never being held accountable. Emma felt something crack open inside her. She'd seen this before. 6 years ago. Men in uniform standing in rooms where dogs bled out on tables, talking about acceptable losses and operational necessities. Men who made decisions that destroyed lives and walked away without consequences. She'd left because she couldn't stand watching it anymore. But standing here now, with Titan trembling under her hand and Crane smiling like he'd already won, Emma realized something. She was done running. You don't remember me, do you? Emma's voice cut through the tension. Crane's eyes shifted to her. Should I? 47th Combat Medical Unit, 6 years ago. I was the medic who filed the complaint about the K9 rehabilitation protocols. Something flickered in Crane's expression. Recognition. Sergeant Hartley. Emma Hartley. You told me the protocols were classified, and I didn't have clearance to question them. Because you didn't. I had clearance to watch dogs die because you rushed them back into the field before they were ready. I had clearance to write reports that got buried. I had clearance to be threatened with a dishonorable discharge if I didn't shut up. Crane's smile faded. You were insubordinate. I was trying to save lives. You were interfering with military operations. I was exposing the fact that you were using dogs like equipment, and when they broke, you threw them away. The alley went quiet. Even Cross was staring at her now. Crane's voice dropped. Careful, Hartley. You're making accusations you can't prove. I can prove all of it. Because Joel Ramsey wasn't the first person you silenced. He was just the first one who documented it. Crane's jaw tightened. Joel Ramsey died in an IED explosion. That's not on me. Joel Ramsey died because you ordered him into a compromised operation to stop him from exposing you. And you used Colonel Vance to do it. That's a lie. Emma stepped forward. Derek tried to stop her, but she shook him off. She moved until she was standing 5 feet from Crane, close enough to see the calculation in his eyes. I know how you operate, she said. I watched you do it for 3 years. You find people who ask questions, people who dig too deep, and you either buy them off or bury them. Joel couldn't be bought, so you buried him. Crane's expression went cold. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know you've been selling U.S. military weapons to private contractors for years. I know you've been using your position to cover it up. And I know you sent Vance to tie up loose ends. Prove it. Emma pulled out her phone. Joel's audio logs mention your name 37 times. The financial records Cross has show wire transfers from accounts linked to you. And the weapons' serial numbers match equipment reported stolen from bases under your command. Crane's hands clenched behind his back. Circumstantial. Maybe, but it's enough to start an investigation. And once people start looking, they're going to find more. Bank accounts, shell companies, offshore transactions. You've been doing this for too long. You got sloppy. I don't get sloppy. You did when you killed Joel Ramsey. Crane's eyes flashed. I didn't kill anyone. No. You had Vance do it for you, just like you've had people do your dirty work for years. But this time, Joel left a trail, and that trail leads straight to you. For a moment, Crane just stared at her. Then he turned to Cross. Agent Cross, I'm invoking my right to legal counsel. I will not be answering any further questions without representation. Cross nodded slowly. That's your right, but you're not leaving this scene until we've processed the evidence. Am I under arrest? Not yet. Then I'm free to go. Cross's hand moved to his sidearm. General, I strongly advise you to stay. Crane's voice went dangerous. Are you threatening a superior officer? I'm advising a person of interest in a federal investigation. Crane studied him. Then slowly he smiled again. You're making a mistake, Agent Cross. A career-ending mistake. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. Crane's smile vanished. He turned and walked back toward his vehicle, flanked by 2 officers who'd been standing in the shadows. Cross made no move to stop him. Emma watched him go, her pulse hammering, her hands shaking. Derek moved beside her. Why'd you let him leave? Cross didn't take his eyes off Crane's departing vehicle. Because arresting him now would give him time to destroy evidence. But if we let him think he's won, he'll get careless. And if he runs, he won't. Men like Crane don't run, they fight. And when they fight, they make mistakes. Emma turned back to Titan. The dog was barely conscious, his breathing labored. She checked the surgical site. Bleeding had increased. The stress of the confrontation had spiked his heart rate, and his body was starting to shut down. I need to get him to a hospital, she said. Now. Cross nodded. I'll have one of my agents escort you. No. Emma's voice was firm. No federal agents, no military personnel, just me and Derek. Cross frowned. That's not protocol. I don't care about protocol. Titan's been through enough. He needs stability, not another convoy of people in uniforms treating him like evidence. He is evidence. He's a victim. Cross studied her. Then he sighed. Fine, but you stay in contact, and if Crane makes a move, we'll call you. Cross pulled out a business card and handed it to her. My direct line. Use it. Emma took the card and shoved it in her pocket. Then she and Derek lifted Titan back onto the gurney. Price and the driver, limping but functional, helped load him into the van. The rear doors closed and the van pulled out of the alley. Emma sat in the back with Titan, one hand on his chest, feeling the rapid flutter of his heartbeat. Derek sat across from her, his face drawn. You shouldn't have pushed Crane like that, he said quietly. Someone had to. You made him an enemy. He was already an enemy. I just stopped pretending otherwise. Derek looked at Titan. What happens now? Emma didn't answer right away. She thought about Joel's audio logs, about the evidence on the drive, about the fact that Crane had walked away from the scene like nothing had happened. Now we make sure he doesn't get away with it, she said finally. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Derek's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the message, and his face went pale. What? Emma asked. Cross just sent me a file. Security footage from the docks the night Joel died. And? Derek turned the phone so Emma could see. On the screen was grainy footage of the warehouse where Joel had been killed. Two figures visible, Joel and Titan, moving through the space. Then a flash, an explosion. The camera shook, but just before the explosion there was movement in the background. A third figure, too far away to identify, but close enough to see they were holding something. A detonator. Emma's stomach dropped. Someone was there. Someone triggered the IED manually. It wasn't a tripwire or a timer. Someone watched Joel walk into that warehouse and blew it. Can Cross trace who it was? He's working on it. But Emma... Derek's voice cracked. Joel knew. You can see it in the footage. He looks right at the camera seconds before the explosion. He knew he was walking into a trap. Emma's chest tightened. Then why'd he go in? Because he thought if he got the evidence, it would be worth it. He thought exposing Crane was more important than his own life. Emma looked at Titan. The dog's eyes were closed now, his breathing shallow. She thought about what Joel had sacrificed, what he'd given up, what he'd left behind. And she thought about the fact that Crane was still walking free. The van pulled up to a small veterinary clinic on the outskirts of Seattle, privately owned, no military connections, no federal oversight. Derek had called ahead. The vet, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands, met them at the door. Bring him in. They moved Titan onto an exam table. The vet worked quickly, efficiently, checking vitals, examining the surgical site, adjusting IV fluids. Emma stood back and let her work, watching the monitors, watching Titan's chest rise and fall. After 20 minutes, the vet stepped back. He's stable, barely, but stable. Emma exhaled hard. What's the prognosis? If he makes it through the next 48 hours, he'll probably survive. But he's been through trauma, physical and psychological. Recovery's going to take time. How much time? Months. Maybe longer. And even then, the vet hesitated. Dogs like this don't just bounce back. He's lost his handler, lost his purpose. He's going to need someone who understands what he's been through. Emma looked at Titan. The dog's eyes were open again, staring at the ceiling, unseeing. I understand, she said quietly. Derek's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and swore under his breath. What now? Emma asked. Cross. Crane's lawyers just filed an injunction blocking the FBI from accessing his financial records. They're claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. Emma's jaw tightened. Can they do that? They just did. And without the financial records, the case falls apart. What about Joel's audio logs? Hearsay. Without corroborating evidence, they're not enough to convict. Emma felt the rage building in her chest. So Crane walks. For now. That's not good enough. Derek met her eyes. I know. But unless we find something concrete, something his lawyers can't block, he's untouchable. Emma's mind raced. She thought about the drive. About the files Joel had risked everything to collect. About the fact that Crane had stood in that alley and smiled because he knew he was protected. And then she remembered something. The collar, she said suddenly. Derek frowned. What about it? When I took it, I didn't just grab the drive. I grabbed the whole collar. And collars like that are fitted with GPS trackers. Derek's eyes widened. So we can track everywhere Titan's been. Everywhere Joel's been. Every mission, every location, every meeting. Including the ones Crane claimed never happened. Emma pulled out her phone and opened a GPS tracking app. She entered the caller's serial number, something she'd memorized during her time in the 47th, and waited. The screen loaded. A map appeared. Dozens of red dots marking locations across Seattle. Warehouses, docks, military bases. And one location that made Emma's blood run cold. A private estate in Bellevue, registered to a shell company owned by Hollis Crane. Joel was at Crane's house, Emma said slowly. Derek leaned over her shoulder. When? Emma checked the timestamp. 3 days before he died. He was there for 40 minutes. Why would Joel go to Crane's house? Maybe he was confronting him, or gathering evidence, or walking into a trap. Emma zoomed in on the map. The GPS tracker showed Joel's exact path, through the front gate, around the side of the house, into a structure at the back of the property. What's that building? Derek asked. Emma switched to satellite view. The structure was separate from the main house. Smaller, windowless, with heavy security. Storage, she said. Or a vault. For what? Emma's pulse quickened. For everything Crane doesn't want found. Derek grabbed his phone. I'm calling Cross. No. Derek stopped. What? Cross can't get a warrant, not fast enough. Crane's lawyers will block it, and by the time it goes through, whatever's in that building will be gone. So what do you suggest? Emma looked at him. We go ourselves. Derek stared at her. That's breaking and entering. That's gathering evidence. That's illegal. So is selling military weapons. So is murder. So is covering it up. Derek's jaw tightened. If we get caught, we won't. Emma. Derek. Joel died trying to expose Crane. Titan almost died. And right now, the only thing stopping Crane from walking away is evidence we can't access through legal channels. So either we do this, or we let him win. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Titan, still lying on the table, still fighting. When? He asked. Tonight. The vet looked between them. I didn't hear any of that. Emma almost smiled. Thank you. They left Titan in the vet's care and drove to Bellevue. The estate was massive, gated, guarded, surrounded by 10-foot walls and security cameras. Derek parked 2 blocks away and pulled out a tablet. Security systems military grade, he said, pulling up schematics. Motion sensors, infrared, facial recognition. We're not getting through the front. What about the back? Derek zoomed in. Service entrance, smaller gate, guard post, still monitored. Emma studied the map. What about the power? What about it? Cut the power, the cameras go down. We'd have maybe 60 seconds before backup generators kick in. 60 seconds isn't enough time to get through the gate and reach the building. It is if we're already inside. Derek frowned. How? Emma pointed to a section of the wall on the tablet. Delivery entrance. Trucks come through here every morning. If we time it right, we slip in with the delivery, cut the power, and move before anyone realizes we're there. That's insane. That's the only option. Derek stared at the tablet. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Price. I need a delivery truck and uniforms. Yes, now. I don't care how you get them. He hung up. This is going to get us killed, he said. Probably. And you're okay with that? Emma thought about Titan, about Joel, about every dog she'd watched die because someone in a uniform decided their life didn't matter. Yeah, she said. I am. 2 hours later, they were wearing delivery uniforms and driving a truck with stolen plates toward Crane's estate. Price had come through, fake IDs, forged manifests, everything they needed to look legitimate. The guard at the gate barely glanced at them. You're late. Traffic, Derek said. The guard waved them through. They drove up the long driveway toward the main house. Emma's heart was hammering. Her hands were sweating. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around. But she didn't. They parked near the service entrance. Emma grabbed a box from the back, empty but convincing, and walked toward the side gate. Derek followed with a tool bag. The guard at the side entrance checked their IDs. What's the delivery? Medical supplies, Emma said. For the general's personal physician. The guard frowned. I wasn't notified. Call the house if you want, but the general's not going to be happy if his insulin gets delayed. The guard hesitated. Then he unlocked the gate. Make it quick. They walked through. The building at the back of the property was exactly where the GPS had shown. Emma and Derek moved fast, keeping their heads down, acting like they belonged. When they reached the building, Derek pulled out a lockpick set. 60 seconds, Emma whispered. Derek worked the lock. It clicked. The door opened. They stepped inside. The space was dark, cold, lined with filing cabinets and storage crates. Emma pulled out a flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Documents. Hundreds of them. Financial records, shipping manifests, communication logs. Everything Crane had been hiding. Derek started photographing files. Emma grabbed a crate and pried it open. Inside were weapons, U.S. military issue, serial numbers filed off. Jesus, Derek breathed. Emma's flashlight landed on something else. A laptop, closed but not locked. She opened it. The screen lit up. And there, in the search history, was a file labeled Ramsey_OP_final. Emma clicked it. Audio files, photos, video footage of the warehouse, of Joel, of the explosion, and at the bottom of the folder, a single document. Authorization, Hollis. Crane operation, eliminate Ramsey, secure evidence, close investigation. Emma's hands shook. She pulled out her phone and started recording everything on the screen. Behind her, Derek swore. Emma, we need to go. Now. Now! Emma looked up. Standing in the doorway, flanked by armed security, was Hollis Crane, and this time he wasn't smiling. Emma's finger hovered over the record button on her phone, the screen still capturing the damning document on Crane's laptop. She didn't move, didn't lower the phone, just kept recording. Crane's face was stone. You're on private property. That makes this trespassing and theft. That makes this evidence collection, Emma said. Her voice was steady, but her pulse hammered against her ribs. You have no legal authority. I have a phone and a live stream. Crane's eyes flicked to her screen. You're bluffing. Try me. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The security guards flanking Crane had their hands on their weapons but hadn't drawn. Derek's hand was in his jacket, probably on his own gun, but he was waiting for Emma's lead. Emma kept the phone aimed at the laptop. Agent Cross is already on his way, so are 4 news crews. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Maybe less. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to let us walk out of here with this evidence, or you're going to explain to every journalist in Seattle why you ordered your security to shoot 2 unarmed civilians on your property. Crane's jaw tightened. You think the press scares me? I think your career scares you. I think the idea of being the first major general court-martialed for treason in 30 years scares you. And I think you're smart enough to know that killing us makes everything worse. Crane studied her. Then slowly, he stepped into the room. The security guard stayed at the door. You're just like Joel, Crane said quietly. Stubborn, self-righteous. Convinced you're doing the right thing. I am doing the right thing. You're destroying the career of a decorated officer based on circumstantial evidence and the word of a dead man. I'm exposing a murderer. Crane's expression didn't change. I didn't kill Joel Ramsey. You ordered it. I gave no such order. Then explain the document on your laptop, the one that says Operation Eliminate Ramsey, the one with your authorization signature. Crane glanced at the screen. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or calculation. That file was planted. By who? By someone trying to frame me. Emma almost laughed. You're going to claim you were set up. I'm stating a fact. The GPS logs put Joel at this location 3 days before he died. The security footage shows him entering this building, and your laptop contains direct evidence linking you to his murder. That's not circumstantial, that's a confession. Crane's voice dropped. You have no idea what you're interfering with. I know exactly what I'm interfering with. A corruption scheme that's been running for years. A cover-up that's gotten people killed. And a system that protects men like you because you're too powerful to touch. I protect this country. You profit from it. The words landed hard. Crane's hands clenched at his sides. Sergeant Hartley, you walked away from the military 6 years ago because you couldn't handle the realities of service. You filed complaints, caused problems, and when you didn't get your way, you quit. Now you're standing in my property, accusing me of crimes you can't prove because you're still angry about dogs that didn't survive. Emma felt the rage building, but she kept her voice level. I left because I couldn't watch you treat living beings like disposable equipment. Because I couldn't stand in rooms where you made decisions that destroyed lives and pretended it was necessary. And because I knew that if I stayed, I'd become just like you, someone who convinced themselves that the mission was more important than the people dying for it. Crane stepped closer. You think you're a hero. You're not. You're a nurse with delusions of righteousness who's about to ruin her life over a cause that doesn't matter. Joel Ramsey mattered. Joel Ramsey was a liability. The admission hung in the air. Emma's phone was still recording. Derek's eyes widened. Even the security guard shifted uncomfortably. Crane realized his mistake a second too late. His face went pale. You just confessed, Emma said quietly. I said he was a liability. That's not a confession. You called him a liability. Not a soldier, not an officer. A liability. That's how you saw him. That's how you see everyone who threatens you. Crane's voice went cold. Turn off the phone. No. Turn it off or I'll have my men take it from you. Emma looked at the security guards. You want to be accomplices to murder? Because that's what you'll be if you follow his orders. The guards didn't move. Crane's face flushed red. That's an order. Still, the guards hesitated. Derek spoke up, his voice calm. They're not stupid, Crane. They know the second they touch us, they're part of this. And unlike you, they probably don't want to spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Crane's hand moved toward his sidearm. Emma's phone buzzed, a notification. Cross. Federal agents entering the estate now. Stay where you are. Emma held up the phone so Crane could see the message. Too late. The sound of vehicles screeching to a halt outside the building echoed through the walls. Voices shouted commands. Footsteps pounded toward the door. Agent Cross burst through, weapon drawn, flanked by a dozen federal agents in tactical gear. His eyes swept the room. Emma, Derek, Crane, the open laptop, the crates of weapons. Major General Hollis Crane, Cross said. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, illegal arms trafficking, obstruction of justice, and treason. Crane didn't move. I want my lawyer. You'll get one, after you're processed. Two agents moved forward and cuffed Crane. He didn't resist, didn't struggle, just stood there face blank as they read him his rights. But as they led him toward the door, he looked back at Emma one last time. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Emma met his eyes. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. They took him away. Emma's hands were shaking. She lowered the phone finally and realized she'd been holding her breath. Derek put a hand on her shoulder. You okay? Emma nodded. She wasn't okay. Not even close. But she was standing, and Crane wasn't. Cross walked over, holstering his weapon. That was incredibly stupid. That was effective, Emma said. You could have been killed. But we weren't. Cross looked at the laptop. Is that what I think it is? Authorization for Joel's murder, signed by Crane, plus financial records, shipping manifests, and enough evidence to bury him for life. Cross pulled out an evidence bag and carefully closed the laptop. I'm going to pretend I don't know how you got access to this. Appreciated. Cross looked at her, and for the first time, there was something close to respect in his eyes. You did good, Hartley. Reckless, illegal, and completely against protocol. But good. Emma almost smiled. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. You're still going to have to testify. Crane's lawyers will come after you hard. Let them. Cross nodded. I'll be in touch. He walked out, leaving Emma and Derek standing in the storage room surrounded by evidence that would dismantle an entire corrupt network. Derek exhaled slowly. That was insane. Yeah. We could have died. Yeah. And you'd do it again. Emma looked at him. Wouldn't you? Derek's expression softened. For Joel? Yeah. I would. They stood there for a moment, letting the adrenaline drain, letting the weight of what they'd done settle over them. Then Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face changed. It's the vet. Titan's awake while... They drove back to the clinic in silence. Emma's mind was spinning with everything that had happened. The confrontation, the arrest, the evidence. But underneath it all was one thought that wouldn't let go. Titan, the dog who'd lost his handler, who'd been ripped away from everything familiar, who'd survived surgery and chaos and trauma because he didn't have a choice. When they walked into the clinic, the vet met them with a tired smile. He's stable. Vitals are improving. I think he's going to make it. Emma's chest tightened. Can I see him? He's been asking for you. Emma followed the vet to the recovery room. Titan was lying on a padded mat, his torso wrapped in fresh bandages, an IV line still running to his leg. But his eyes were open, alert. And when he saw Emma, his tail moved. Just once. Just a small thump against the mat. But it was enough. Emma knelt beside him. Hey, soldier. Titan's nose nudged her hand. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. She'd spent 6 years trying to forget what it felt like to care about these dogs, to invest in their survival, to believe that saving them mattered. But kneeling here, with Titan's warm breath against her palm, she realized she'd been lying to herself. She'd never stopped caring. She'd just stopped believing she could make a difference. Derek crouched next to her. What happens to him now? Emma looked at the vet. What's the protocol for military dogs whose handlers are KIA? The vet's expression was careful. Usually they're reassigned or retired to a facility. A facility? It's not ideal, but it's policy. Emma's jaw tightened. He's not going to a facility. Emma, he's not. He's been through enough. He doesn't need to be locked in a cage waiting for someone to decide he's useful again. Derek was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Joel left instructions in his will. If anything happened to him, Titan was supposed to go to me. Emma looked at him. Can you take care of him? I don't know. I'm not Joel. Nobody's asking you to be. Derek looked at Titan. The dog's eyes were on him now, watching, waiting. Joel always said Titan needed someone who understood him, Derek said quietly. Someone who knew what he'd been through. Someone who wouldn't give up on him. He looked at Emma. Emma's breath caught. I'm not a handler. You're better than a handler. You're someone who actually gives a damn. I don't have the training. You have 6 years of experience rehabilitating combat dogs. You have the instincts, and you have something most handlers don't. What's that? You see them as more than tools. Emma looked at Titan. The dog was still watching her, his expression almost hopeful. She thought about the dogs she'd worked with, the ones who'd survived, the ones who hadn't. She thought about why she'd left, and she thought about why she'd come back. If I do this, she said slowly, I do it my way. No military oversight, no forced reassignments. Titan stays with me until he's ready to decide what happens next. Derek nodded. Deal. The vet smiled. I'll start the paperwork. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma took a leave of absence from St. Catherine's. Not that she planned to go back. Caldwell had already sent her 3 messages asking if she was coming back, each one more pointed than the last. But Emma needed time. Time to process what had happened. Time to figure out what came next. Time to help Titan heal. She spent her days at the clinic, learning Titan's routines, his triggers, his needs. The vet taught her how to change his bandages, how to monitor his pain levels, how to recognize signs of distress. Derek visited daily, bringing supplies, sitting with Titan, talking about Joel. He used to take Titan running every morning, Derek said one afternoon. 5 miles, rain or shine, said it kept them both sane. Emma was sitting on the floor next to Titan, who had his head in her lap. When can he start exercising again? Another week, maybe? Start slow? Short walks? Let him set the pace. Titan's ear twitched at the word walk. Emma smiled and scratched behind it. He understands more than people think, she said. Joel used to say the same thing, said Titan could read a room better than most people. Emma looked at Derek. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Why didn't Joel get out? He knew the system was broken. He knew what Crane was doing. Why did he stay? Derek was quiet for a long moment, because he thought he could fix it from the inside. He thought if he gathered enough evidence, if he built a strong enough case, someone would listen, someone would care. And they didn't. Not until it was too late. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. Joel knew the risks. He made his choice. Derek's voice cracked slightly. I just wish I could have been there. Wish I could have stopped it. You couldn't have known. That doesn't make it easier. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Titan shifted in Emma's lap, getting more comfortable. His breathing was steady now, his body relaxed. He was healing, slowly, but healing. 3 days later, Cross called Emma. We need you in D.C. The Senate Armed Services Committee wants to hear your testimony. Emma's stomach dropped. When? Next week. They're fast-tracking the investigation. Crane's lawyers are pushing for dismissal, claiming prosecutorial overreach. Your testimony could make the difference. What about Derek? He'll testify too. But Emma, they're going to come at you hard. They'll question your motives, your credibility, your mental state. They'll try to paint you as a disgruntled ex-soldier with an axe to grind. Let them. I'm serious. This won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. Cross was quiet for a moment. Fair point. I'll send you the details. He hung up. Emma looked at Titan. Looks like we're going to Washington. The vet shook her head. He's not ready to fly. Not yet. How long? Another week, maybe 2. Emma pulled out her phone and called Cross back. I need more time. Titan can't travel yet. Emma, the hearing's scheduled, then reschedule it. I'm not leaving him. Cross sighed. I'll see what I can do. He got them an extra 10 days. Emma used the time to prepare. She reviewed Joel's audio logs, studied the documents from Crane's laptop, practiced her testimony with Derek. She also spent hours with Titan, walking him slowly around the clinic grounds, helping him rebuild his strength. One morning, Titan stopped during their walk and stared at a bird perched on a fence. His body went tense, ears forward, nose twitching. For a moment, Emma thought he was going to lunge, but then his tail wagged. Just once, and Emma realized he wasn't tracking the bird as prey. He was just watching, curious, present. It was the first time she'd seen him act like a dog instead of a soldier. Good boy, she whispered. Titan looked up at her, tongue lolling, and for a second she could have sworn he was smiling. 2 weeks after Crane's arrest, Emma and Derek flew to Washington with Titan. The dog rode in a crate in the cargo hold, a necessary evil that made Emma's stomach churn. But when they landed and she opened the crate, Titan stepped out calmly, looking around the new environment with interest rather than fear. Progress. They stayed in a hotel near Capitol Hill. Emma barely slept the night before the hearing, her mind replaying every possible question, every potential attack. Derek knocked on her door at dawn. You ready? Emma looked at herself in the mirror. She was wearing the same borrowed blazer from before, the same uncomfortable shoes. She looked tired, scared, nothing like someone who should be testifying before Congress. No, she said. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. They left Titan with a dog sitter Cross had arranged, a former K9 handler who understood combat dogs. Emma hated leaving him, but she had no choice. The hearing room was massive. High ceilings, wood paneling, rows of seats filled with journalists, military personnel, and people Emma didn't recognize. At the front, a panel of 9 senators sat behind a long table, their faces serious. Emma and Derek were sworn in. Then the questions started. Senator Margaret Hollis, no relation to Crane, thankfully, led the questioning. She was in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a voice that commanded attention. Ms. Hartley, you served in the 47th Combat Medical Unit for 3 years. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And you left the military in 2020. Why? Emma took a breath. Because I couldn't reconcile what I was being asked to do with what I believed was right. Can you elaborate? I was asked to prioritize operational readiness over the welfare of the dogs I was treating. I was asked to clear dogs for return to service when they weren't ready, and when I raised concerns, I was told to stand down. Who told you to stand down? Multiple officers, including Major General Hollis Crane. A murmur rippled through the room. Senator Hollis leaned forward. You're saying General Crane directly ordered you to ignore your medical judgment? Not in those words, but the message was clear. The mission came first. The dogs came second. And you disagreed with that priority. I believed and still believe that if we're going to use animals in military operations, we have a responsibility to care for them, not just as tools, but as living beings who experience pain, fear, and trauma. That's a philosophical position. It's a moral one. Senator Hollis studied her. Ms. Hartley, you're aware that some people might view your actions, breaking into General Crane's property, stealing evidence, as vigilantism. I'm aware. And yet you did it anyway, because I knew that if I went through proper channels, the evidence would disappear. Crane had been covering his tracks for years. If Derek and I hadn't acted when we did, Joel Ramsey's death would have been written off as an accident, and the corruption would have continued. But you violated the law. I did what was necessary. Senator Hollis's expression didn't change. That's a dangerous precedent, Ms. Hartley. Citizens can't simply decide which laws apply to them. With respect, Senator, neither can generals. And when the people who are supposed to uphold the law are the ones breaking it, someone has to act. The room went silent. Senator Hollis exchanged a glance with the other panel members. Then she nodded. Thank you for your candor. We'll now hear from Mr. Derek Ramsey. Derek's testimony was shorter, but no less powerful. He walked the committee through Joel's audio logs, the GPS tracking, the evidence they'd found at Crane's estate. He talked about his brother, not as a soldier, but as a person. Someone who'd believed in doing the right thing even when it cost him everything. By the time Derek finished, there were tears in the eyes of several people in the audience. The questioning went on for 3 more hours. Crane's lawyers tried to discredit Emma, suggesting she had a personal vendetta, that she was mentally unstable, that her testimony was unreliable. But every time they pushed, Emma pushed back with facts, with evidence, with the truth. When it was finally over, Senator Hollis looked directly at Emma. Ms. Hartley, this committee will review all testimony and evidence before making a recommendation. But I want to say something on the record. What you did was illegal. It was reckless. And it took more courage than most people in this room will ever be asked to show. Thank you. Emma's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. They adjourned. Emma and Derek walked out of the hearing room into a hallway filled with reporters shouting questions. Cross appeared and guided them through a side exit. That went better than I expected, he said. What happens now? Emma asked. The committee deliberates. Could take weeks, maybe months. And Crane? He's being held without bail. His lawyers are trying to get the charges reduced, but with your testimony, I don't think they'll succeed. Emma felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief. Not yet. But hope. Derek's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. It's the dog sitter. Titan's not eating. Emma's pulse spiked. We need to get back. They rushed back to the hotel. The dog sitter met them in the lobby, looking worried. He's been pacing since you left. Won't touch his food. Won't settle. Emma took the stairs 2 at a time. When she opened the hotel room door, Titan was standing by the window, staring out at the street. His body was tense, his breathing rapid. Hey, Emma said softly. I'm here. Titan turned. His tail started wagging immediately. He crossed the room and pressed against her legs, whining softly. Emma knelt down and wrapped her arms around him. I know, I'm sorry. I won't leave you like that again. Titan licked her face. Derek stood in the doorway watching. He missed you. Yeah. That's good. Means he's bonding. Emma buried her face in Titan's fur. I missed him too. They flew back to Seattle the next day. Titan was calmer on the return flight, though he still whined when they loaded him into the crate. Emma promised herself she'd find a way to avoid flying with him in the future. Back in Seattle, life fell into a routine. Emma officially resigned from St. Catharines. Caldwell sent one final message. You would have made a good doctor, that made Emma smile despite everything. She moved into a larger apartment, one with a yard where Titan could run. She started working with the vet to develop a rehabilitation plan, and she started thinking about the future. One evening, Derek came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. They sat on Emma's porch while Titan dozed in the grass, watching the sunset. I've been thinking, Derek said, about what you said, about starting a rehabilitation program. Emma looked at him. Yeah? I want to help. Joel left me some money, his life insurance. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it, and I think he'd want it to go towards something like this. Emma's chest tightened. Derek, it's what he would have wanted. He spent his whole career watching dogs get chewed up by the system. If we can build something that actually helps them, that actually gives them a chance, that's how we honor him. Emma was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. Let's do it. They spent the next 3 months planning. They found a property, an old veterinary clinic on the outskirts of Seattle that had been sitting empty for years. They hired contractors. They reached out to veterinarians, trainers, behaviorists. They built partnerships with military organizations, though Emma insisted on maintaining full autonomy. No one gets to tell us how to run this place, she said during one meeting with a potential donor. We prioritize the dogs. Not the mission, not the optics, the dogs. Some donors walked away, others stayed. By the time they were ready to open, they had funding for 2 years, a staff of 6, and space for 20 dogs. Emma stood in the lobby of what they'd named the Ramsey Recovery Center and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. The opening day was chaos. 12 dogs arrived in the first week, German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Labradors, all of them with trauma, all of them needing help. Emma worked 18-hour days, overseeing care, developing protocols, making sure every dog received the individual attention they needed. Titan became a fixture at the center, calm and confident around the other dogs, almost like he understood his role as a mentor. One afternoon, a young Marine brought in a Belgian Malinois named Ace. The dog was missing his right front leg and had scars across his back. The Marine, barely 22, looked like he hadn't slept in days. "He's my partner," the Marine said quietly. "But I'm getting discharged, medical, and they want to reassign him. I can't let him go back to that." Emma knelt next to Ace. The dog watched her warily, but didn't pull away. "We'll take care of him." The Marine's eyes filled with tears. "You promise?" "I promise." She meant it. 4 months after the hearing, Cross called with news. The Senate committee issued their report. They're recommending Crane be court-martialed on all charges. They're also calling for a full review of military canine protocols and oversight of equipment sales. Emma closed her eyes. "And Vance?" 23 years in federal prison, no parole. That's not enough. It's what we got. Emma knew he was right. Justice was messy, incomplete, but it was something. The trial took 8 months. Emma testified twice more, each time reliving the night in the alley, the confrontation at Crane's estate, the evidence they'd found. Crane's lawyers tried everything: character assassination, procedural challenges, claims of illegal search, and seizure. None of it worked. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Crane was sentenced to 45 years in military prison. No possibility of parole. Emma watched the verdict on the news from the center's office, Titan asleep at her feet. When the judge read the sentence, she felt something release in her chest. Not satisfaction, not closure, but acknowledgement. Joel Ramsey's death hadn't been in vain. The system that had failed him was being forced to change, and the man responsible was finally being held accountable. Derek called 5 minutes after the verdict. "We did it." "Yeah," Emma said. "We did." Joel would be proud. Emma looked at Titan. "I hope so." 6 months later, the Ramsey Recovery Center was operating at full capacity. They'd helped 37 dogs transition out of military service. 15 had been adopted by their former handlers. 8 had been placed with civilian families trained to handle their needs. 14 were still in residence, working through their trauma at their own pace. Emma stood in the training yard one morning, watching Titan work with a young German shepherd named Scout. Scout had arrived 3 weeks earlier, terrified of loud noises, unable to be around other dogs. But Titan had taken to him immediately, showing patience Emma hadn't known dogs could show. Now Scout was playing, actually playing, chasing a ball, wagging his tail. Derek walked up beside her. "You did this?" "We did this." "No, you did this. I just helped with the logistics." Emma shook her head. "Joel started it. He's the one who had the courage to stand up when everyone else was looking the other way. And you're the one who finished it." They stood in silence, watching the dogs. "You ever think about going back?" Derek asked. "To nursing?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "No, this is where I'm supposed to be." "You're sure?" "I spent 6 years running from this, from the responsibility, from the heartbreak. I told myself I was protecting myself by walking away. But I was wrong. Walking away didn't protect me. It just made me feel useless. And now?" Emma looked at Titan, at Scout, at the other dogs scattered across the yard. "Now I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Derek smiled. "Good." He walked back toward the office, leaving Emma alone with the dogs. She thought about the night in the trauma bay when Titan had first arrived, when everyone had written him off as aggressive, unstable, beyond help. She thought about how wrong they'd been, and she thought about all the dogs who never got a second chance, who never found someone willing to fight for them. She couldn't save them all. She knew that. But she could save some, and some was enough. Titan trotted over and sat at her feet, looking up at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. "What do you think?" Emma asked him. "We doing okay?" Titan's tail wagged. Emma smiled. "Yeah, I think so too." As the sun climbed higher, she walked back toward the center, Titan at her side. There was work to do, dogs to feed, protocols to update, new arrivals to assess. But for the first time in 6 years, Emma wasn't running from the work. She was running toward it, because she'd learned something in the chaos of those weeks, something Joel Ramsey had known all along. The people in power don't change because you ask nicely. They don't step down because it's the right thing to do. They change when someone stands up and refuses to back down, when someone decides that doing the right thing matters more than staying safe. Emma wasn't a hero. She'd made mistakes. She'd broken laws. She'd put people in danger. But she'd also exposed corruption that had been buried for years. She'd saved a dog's life. She'd helped build something that would help hundreds more. And she'd proven that the quiet ones, the ones everyone overlooks, can be the most dangerous when they finally decide to fight back. Emma opened the center's front door. Titan walked through first, confident now, healed, and Emma followed him inside, ready for whatever came next, because she wasn't the overlooked nurse anymore. She was Emma Hartley, and she'd just changed the whole damn system.